Okay, I've got an entire laundry list of stuff to talk about with this one, starting with how it was originally just going to be me doing a little steady replication of a piece that I found abandoned, sadly, on Google Images, but then of course I couldn't just stop at a sketch. I ended up screwing around with it digitally, painting it, lighting it, and then deciding that I wanted to paint it physically too. So here's me doing all of that. So yeah, the pose for this did not come out of my brain. It came from this beautiful image, and as you can see, no idea who the original artist is, which sucks, but I tried to look for it, and now that I have disclosed this information, we can continue in peace. Second order of business is the recording itself. You can't tell yet because we're still in the lightbox phase, but oh boy, as soon as the lightbox turns off and you're just watching me paint, you're gonna notice that the colors look kind of washed out, kind of flat, kind of bad. So I in fact no longer am recording on my potato phone, I'm recording on webcam. But see, the thing about that is that you need good light to make, decent webcam footage, and I was recording this at night with just the ambient lighting in my apartment. It didn't work so hot. I tried to correct it as much as I could in post, but this is kind of a garbage recording just because I dove in without really testing it thoroughly. But whatever, that's that out of the way. So I'm starting to put down all of my colors, and I was working off of my digital render. And I discovered, over the course of this, how friggin' difficult it is to match digital lighting on an analog surface, essentially. So when I did this, I used a bunch of multiply layers and some screen, and I got some really cool lighting effects going. And then I went, okay, how do I make this same effect happen on the real paper and the real paint? Because obviously physical paint behaves a whole lot differently than digital multiply layers do. So I was doing my best to figure all of that out. It ended up being a lot of layers, possibly too much water, and overworking the paint in some points. This part that you are seeing me do now is not the trickiest bit. Getting down the background, I, kind of have an idea of needs to be darker here, needs to be lighter here. I did a lot of color sampling in Photoshop to try to match the tones for the background as much as I could. Obviously, his shirt is black, that's easy. I didn't have to do anything too crazy on the face, but I think here, if I ever stop mixing paint, we're gonna see where it got really interesting, and that is on the hair. This is the part where I started to get really ambitious, possibly a little over-ambitious. I was also using a brush that was too small for the gigantic surface area that I was trying to cover, which, it's gonna cause some problems for me in a little bit here. You can already see as it's drying, things are getting weird, things were getting uneven. I had mixed a brown and a browny black color to try to have some of the color variation that I wanted. Somewhere in there, my water ratios went weird, and I got this mess. At this point, I was like, oh no, I have ruined everything. And then I think I let it dry completely. Pretty sure. I don't think that I could have gotten these crisp lines unless I had let it dry completely. The good news is that when I went in to add the finer details, it covered up a lot of the disaster portions, thankfully. Bad news is, this paper was getting really, really saturated by this point, and kind of everything that I did to the hair from this point onward just was a little bit off. I think just because the paper was so oversaturated. So that's probably enough of me complaining about my flawed process. I'm going to talk about a part of the process that I did that was different, that I actually quite liked how it came out. So I think with every piece I've done up until now, I've always had I've always done line art in pen before I put any paint down. Just kind of helped me out because I like the look of line art, all of that kind of thing. But you may have noticed I didn't do that. I just didn't do it. I went off of my pencil lines and I painted stuff in, and it came out really nicely, actually. I like the effect. There are a few parts where I basically mix like a really dark version of a color to give some more outline and like choose where I want my outlines, and they're a little bit more cohesive with the rest of the piece. It was a good exercise in changing up my process a little bit. I may do it again, I may not. I don't know, we're gonna have to see. But I liked that. So this is the point where I did, in fact, let the paper dry overnight. And I'm about to just pour buckets of water all over it again. I'm messing with the hair still, because you can't stop messing with the hair once you start messing with the hair, especially when you feel like the hair looked better in your digital render and you're not sure what you did to it because you only used 2 colors and now you're using 1,000,000 and it's not working. But that's okay. Here's my really, really intense attempt at creating the effects of a multiply layer by adding a heck ton of paint and water, and then I did some weird stuff and I blotted it with a paper towel, and it just, I overworked it a bit. It's not terrible, I don't think that you can tell that much, but that happened. I also added the same yellow that I used for his eyes. I know you can't tell his eyes are yellow because my recording is so atrocious, but I added that at the top because that is also what I did in my digital render. I don't know if it made a ton of difference in the overall lighting, but it did a little for the color. So while I came at this voiceover at like 1,000,000 miles an hour and just started with my complaints right off the bat, I'm actually quite happy with how this turned out, both the digital render version and the physical analog version. I just like to self-critique, and there was just a lot of stuff that I did during this that was new or different, and I think with anything that you do that is new or different, you tend to make more mistakes on the first few attempts than you do happy accidents. But there were also some happy accidents in this, and now that we're kind of getting to the end and I'm just, adding those little details and darker colors, it is really starting to come together, which is very nice to see in hindsight. So, this is my painting that I painted in a bunch of times in a bunch of different ways. And thank you for listening to me ramble. Okay, bye!